Today, I'm taking a look at the 2021 Assault Cycle Target Recon. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Cards video. This is a really important one. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, keep you all entertained as well as informed. I'm going to be going over the new Ravager VXP targets, which I've been able to test thanks to the exterminators having crazy amounts of hit points compared to our assault holes, and a few other things with countermeasures and some other stuff. Probably have a dock with about 40 hours of damage on it now, so you don't have to if you're watching this. Jumping right into it, a bit of background on these is that this is all 100% based on the VXP targets and the stats on the hull itself. Of course, the target is completely subject to change, and Kixeye could screw around and do something completely different by the time raid happens. This hasn't happened in a year or two, so this should be a pretty accurate target that we end up going through. We expect the final targets will have the same mechanics, but will have a different layout. Kixeye will probably also release their own strategy guide, or as I'm calling it, a Target Recon build materials. That came out last time the day of the raid, which I think is ridiculous. A strategy game is one where you have all the information and make decisions based on that, not wild guesswork when you literally have 4 hours left to change around everything. Enough of that, let's jump into the first element. This one is the Fogcutter Missile, and that's this missile shown right here. It is long range, has a firing arc. These are dependent a little bit on which one. Some have shorter range ones, some have longer range ones. Again, it does depend a little bit. And this has, very long range. You're not going to outrange it. It is a minimum range of sorts, so you can move around here. And it's structured to shoot around inside the clouds here because this thing, hence the name, does go through the clouds. It is dumbfire and does leave an area of effect field, which does the same damage to all ships in that field, at least as far as I can tell. And this is penetrative damage, so just be aware of that one. And if you stay moving at a fairly fast pace with at least decently fast ships, you can avoid the damage. If it does hit, it will do penetrative damage to everything inside that ring of sorts. Also, no countermeasures work against this, and again, it does see you through clouds. Fairly low threat unless you're going to auto, in which it might hurt you a bit more. But that's true for just about everything. The next one is the Vulture Missile, which is this little guy right here on the right next to the other turret. This one is a medium range, it just barely outranges you. For reference, your scatterguns have a range of 98, and my exterminator has a range of 98, so a bit flipped here. Anyway, it shoots at you, you can outrange, it shoots at you, outranges you, does damage to you, and it's missile damage, penetrative. It can miss, and evade works. Also, Missile Defense System 3 works, although that is not pictured firing here. It's got about 6 or so shots here, so it's not going to completely overwhelm your entire ships, and pretty standard here. Also, it has a tactical field tag on it right here. The information I was given was that this is thermal to detect subs, which doesn't make sense to me because it's A, not a thermal ring, and B, there aren't any assault subs in the first place, so just be aware of that. It might detect subs, it probably does, but if something weird ends up happening, it's probably the fault of this little yellow tag right here, which is a subsonic cavitator tag. Moving on to our next item on the list, we have the scattergun turret, and this is right next to the Vulture Missile. And this does scattergun damage, as you might expect, and it has a longer range than you. Again, it cannot see you from the cloud if you happen to be inside that. It's like I just killed that one. And again, it is dumbfire splash, so just be aware of that thing. If you stay moving at a fast pace, the turret can outrange you, and I'll try and get in range of here by the time I'm done talking about this one. Dumbfire splash, evade does not work, countermeasures do not work, and you can outrun the damage if you are very fast, although it's going to be a little bit difficult to do with how high the projectile speed is on this thing in the first place. I've estimated the range at around 100, being that it was going to outrange your Ravagers that you're actually going to be using in the targets. Looks a little bit like that. Fairly fast reload, decently high damage. Nothing too much to worry about, but it is going to outrange you and hit your Ravagers pretty much every single time, so it's sort of the guaranteed damage of this target. Next up is the Reaver Scout, and those are these 3 ships pictured right here. They're fairly fast, have a short range of about 80. You can just barely outrange these things with your Ravagers, and your Exterminators are a little bit easier, but obviously you're not going to be using the Exterminators in the target. It does do corrosive scattergun damage, and is, quite a lot of that. It's dumbfire splash, evade's not going to work, countermeasures will not work, but you can maybe help out with this one by outrunning it a little bit as well as outranging it. That is the Reaver Scout. Next up is the Spite, and that's the ship shown up about here. It is a medium-range missile ship, is the way I like to think about this thing. It's going to run towards you and do some amount of damage to you. It's penetrative, even though the missiles look a little bit green or grayish to me, so it's going to do some damage to you there. Look at that, it's firing at me. Missile Defense System 3 will work against these, as will Evade. Pretty standard missile ship there, if you ask me. Next up is the Reaver Hulk. This thing is pretty complicated. It has two different weapons, the first of which you're seeing right here is a long-range UAV, the second of which is a scattergun, which you're also seeing right here. The UAV has slightly longer range and will easily outrange your Ravagers as well as the scattergun. It looks to me like it outranges your Ravagers. Now, both of these are what you would expect, sort of. The UAV can only be shot down with Missile Defense System 3. Gales or sprints do not work. And it does do penetrative damage, if you were wondering about that one. In terms of the scattergun, I'm calling it medium range, does corrosive damage, evade, countermeasures do not work, but it is dumbfire. Also, the Hulk here starts shrouded and will only unshroud when you kill this outpost building, at least in this target right here. Sorry, I can't get a better visual of that thing. It's literally on the top of the map. It will only unshroud when you kill this thing. And it does see you through the clouds, as evidenced by this thing right here. This is going to be probably one of the larger things to worry about in the target. It does have sort of a field around this thing. It might debuff you, and I can't quite tell for sure. But this is going to be the thing that you're going to want to worry about quite a bit in these targets here and take out those buildings before the Hulks are taking out you, because you can't shoot at it when it is shrouded. There is the Reaver Hulk. And I just showed you our next element, which was this Drac Outpost right here. It's the thing that killing that unshrouds the Hulks. Pretty standard right there if you ask me. We also have the clouds as shown here. Most things in this target cannot see you if you are in the cloud, so use them to your advantage. The exception is, of course, these Fogcutter Missiles, as well as the Hulk, which I just killed. Be aware of that. So if you have your Ravagers, you can hide right here, shoot at things inside the cloud, and that works great. Both you and the enemy use them, so if the enemy Hulk drives into a cloud, the enemy Spite drives into a cloud, you can't shoot at it till it comes out. You could do something with the flagship, say, of using that one, luring out a ship, and such as the Hulk right here, running away before it actually fires at you, and pulling it through the cloud almost, so that it won't fire at that ship. Of course, that will not work with the Hulk, but if you were using it with a regular ship, it should work great. That's going to be one of the elements of the skill targets based on what we saw on the Tier 7 Saturn and Nemesis Assault cycle. Finishing out here with some general strategies, it looks like for this target and with the damage over time we're going to have on our Ravagers, you're going to want to hit and run sort of like a drive-by. So be going by this island here, shoot at a few things, run away, come back 8 seconds later, hopefully things are dead, or you have to go through a second pass. For that reason, I think combat speed is going to be quite important and you want to stay moving. Also make sure you are outranging the Reaver Scouts if at all possible, and those are pretty fast. It might be a bit difficult, but it should be possible for skilled drivers out there. Again, like I just showed you, hide in clouds, and that will work against these regular ships without the Fogcutter effect. And Missile Defense System 3 will work. I'm going to tell you that I think between 2 and 5 will work well. I think 2 has a 98% chance of working fine. We might see some benefits on the flagship for that we might not. Also, I have not mentioned much about countermeasures in this target. I'll go ahead and do that right now. I'm telling you MDS3 is the way to go. Gales do not fire, period. Sprints do not fire, period. I did test the multi-form anti-missile, and you might think it works well because it has a lot of multi-shot. I did not find it to be very effective whatsoever because the way multi-shot works on countermeasures, they all shoot at one projectile at a time, then all shoot at the next one. It really wasn't good enough to be worth considering compared to the very high amount of anti-missile accuracy we're going to have on our Ravagers that should shoot down, it looks like to me, 100% of the incoming missiles. So hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, if you learned something, go ahead and leave a comment and I'll get back to you with any questions that you might have. Thank you to folks who are supporting the channel. My next video should be a build update for the Ravager, and I hope this was helpful. As always, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.